Hello everybody. I'm just checking to make sure that I'm actually going live here. It says I'm live. There we go. Now it says I'm live for real again. I'm not seeing myself. There we go. In the book, in the group. Just gonna give it a second here. I'm not sure why it's not showing up in the group yet. There we go. Welcome. So many of you are here in the breaking point. And a lot of you are here because you're in some kind of struggle in your relationship, whether it be that you're just in a temporary conflict, you've been in conflict for a couple days, a couple years, a couple months, doesn't matter. Now I know Facebook has also invited other people, and I sent it out to my email list. So some of you that are here are single, some are widowed, and there's also stuff inside this class for you. You are here for a reason. And what to expect in this class is really some straight talk from me. We're going to talk about energy. We're going to talk about patterns. I'm going to tell you some stories and how I've learned some of this. We're going to talk a little bit of science, a lot of soul. I'm going to teach you a couple of healing techniques and clearing techniques. And go ahead, and I want you to engage live. In other words, throw things in the comments, ask questions, react, whatever you need to do, because you engaging in the energy, whether you're here live or watching the replay, is going to help support your own healing and growth. Because we know that when you start engaging with your energy, everything starts locking into place. So I'm going to turn off my heater here so it doesn't get too crazy. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Dawn Bennett. I've been in the field of healing and somatic work and body work and stuff for 27 years now. But I've really been focused on that mind, body, spirit connection since I graduated from homeopathy school in 2009. So my goal is to help you find love, peace, joy, healing. Because I know that everybody is a basic human need is to be connected, to love, to feel loved. We know that it helps with your health. We know that it helps with your nervous system regulation. And when we're in unhealthy places, it does not help with your emotional regulation or your nervous system. So how can we find the joy, the peace, the love, the happiness within ourselves, regardless of what you're deciding in your relationship? So some people at the end of this class may have some more clarity around what they want to do, how they want to interact in their relationship. You'll get some tools on how to try communicating and some deeper understandings about why your partner's driving you crazy and what to do about it. Okay? So let's start just talking about why you're stuck or why you're here. So many people resonated with the Breaking Point Masterclass because they are in a spot that feels like, do I want to leave or do I want to stay? Or I kind of want to leave, but I'm not really sure if I should or I can or if it's safe to. Or there seems to be all these reasons why I can't, or I want to give it one more try. Or is it me? So I want you to know that when we look at relationships, right, we can look at you as a person in the relationship. We can look at your partner as another person in the relationship, and then the relationship as a third aspect. And we know from a lot of times in relationships and from healing work that everything influences each other. So when you make a change, even in yourself, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and physically I don't just mean by looks, I mean like how are you holding yourself, how are you carrying yourself, what's your bearing, which is also tied in with the emotional and spiritual, it will create changes in the relationship, which then will encourage and sometimes force the other person to change as well, because they have to adapt. Like, for example, I had this client that came in that was frustrated because she wasn't getting her needs met in the relationship. One of the reasons she wasn't getting her needs met is she didn't even know what her needs are. And I see this all the time, where we're frustrated because we don't know what our needs are and we don't know how to communicate them. Or we think we know what we need, but it's not quite right. So even when we get what we've asked for, it still doesn't feel that hole or that dissatisfaction or that energy inside that's asking for peace. So how do we navigate that? So when she came in, we started working with, first of all, what are the needs that you need, right? And when we look at what do we actually need, we can look at this at different levels, right? We can look at like, what are our basic survival needs, right? What kind of safety do I need? What kind of emotional support do I need? Or what kind of care do I need? What kind of attention do I need? We can bring it to all kinds of different levels of needs. Now, some needs your partner is going to be able to meet if they so choose. Other ones are going to be in conflict with their own needs or desires or wants. So this is where the relationships can get really tricky and really dynamic very quickly, because this is where people start saying like, oh, there's no such thing as compromise. Well, there is compromise. And sometimes with compromise, both of you lose a little bit of what you want. Sometimes, though, you can find a win-win in your compromise. So every aspect of relationship is going to be different, right? If I want to go out every Saturday night and my significant other wants to stay in every Saturday night, sure, we can alternate. That's a nice compromise. Will we both be happy? Maybe. How are we framing it and looking at it, right? So this is why I start saying, when we start looking at compromise, do we actually both lose in some ways? And some people would say yes, but then I say, what is the framing that you're looking at it from? If you're looking at it as I'm missing out by not going out with my significant other Saturday night, and here's why it sucks for me and all of the things, and here's why the other person is so bad because I'm not going out, of course you're going to be unhappy. Of course it's going to be discontent. Of course it's going to be one of those things on your list that creates a check mark against the relationship. But what if you could reframe? Of like, I'm so happy that they're choosing to go out with me every Saturday, and then I get to choose to stay in with them every other Saturday. And now it becomes a choice. It becomes more free. Or what would it look like if they come out every other Saturday and you go out by yourself and with friends every other Saturday? Like, is there a way that both of you can get needs met and reframe it for yourself that it feels positive and powerful and joyful? Because sometimes we even have conflicts within ourselves, right? We've all had this moment where we kind of want to go out, but we're lazy to go out. We kind of want to stay in, right? And then once we're like going to the gym, I want to go to the gym and exercise, but it's so hard to get there. But once I'm there, I'm happy I'm there. So this happens often whenever we're in relationship dynamics. So what happens when we really start getting hurt in relationships, or when we start getting to this level of the breaking point? Often it's because we're in fear, or we're scared, or there's been something big that's happened, like the breaking point. For example, I don't like being sworn at. I don't like being talked down to. I've had relationships where that was a huge dynamic, and I used to just walk away and say, you know what, I don't have to listen to that. I don't believe that. That's not there. And it seemed not to impact me. But then over time and over time and over time, one day it was like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I do not want the rest of my life to look and feel like this. So this is where we start making that transition into the breaking point. And then we start saying like, well, am I making too big of a deal of this? Right? Am I too scared to go? And start looking at yourself. Fear is the opposite of love. Okay? Fear is the opposite of love. And every emotion that we have and that we experience, we are creating within ourselves. In other words, we make a choice every moment of every day, inside and outside of relationships, of where we are holding our power, of where we are holding our joy, our freedom. And not say that bad things don't happen, but guess what? I can have a super, super awful, crazy, crappy day because my significant other is having an awful, crazy, crappy day. Or I can be like, wow, that's really too bad that they're having an awful, crazy, crappy day. Do I feel like supporting them in some way? Can I even support them in some way? Or do I just get to sit back and kind of observe from a really loving, a holding space kind of space and be in my own joy? Because this is what happens in relationship. Right? I remember a time when I was with my boyfriend and we were traveling, and we had set aside a day to go do something, right? Like we took an extra day off work so he and I could just be alone after all the events that we were going to. And he said, well, why don't you just plan whatever you want to do? And I was like, great. But then I started going like, oh, well, he doesn't like doing that. And he doesn't like doing that. And I don't know how much money he has. So should I really schedule that? No, that's a little too far out of the way. And I started double guessing everything that I wanted to do. Right? So this is me working myself up, making up stories about what would work or what wouldn't work. So finally I was like, I don't know, like you don't like hiking, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, you don't want to do that. I know you don't. And he was like, honey, why don't you just put a list together or tell me some things that you'd like to do? And then I can decide. Like, yeah, hiking's not my favorite thing, but I don't mind going for 2, 3, 4 miles sometimes with you. I don't want to do it every day. But if we're somewhere different and that's what you love, I want to see you happy, right? So I had already made assumptions based upon what past relationships, what he had said in the past about his desire to hike or not hike, right? And the pace that I wanted to go and all the things. So where are you doing that in your own relationship? Where are you creating expectations and or where are you already making assumptions that something's going to go X, Y, or Z way? Let's talk a little bit about the unconscious mind. So we have got our conscious mind, which you can think about as your thinking mind, right? It's the one that tells you all the stories, that reminds you to go grocery shopping. You're thinking about your lists. You're actively using your conscious mind all the time. Now your unconscious mind is the part of you that's basically a brain function that controls your behaviors, your choices, your patterns, your beliefs, and how you express in the world. Now, it also controls your vital functions, right? Your breath and your heart rate and all of that kind of stuff. But let me give you an example of how the unconscious mind works. Well, first, the unconscious mind, for example, is the part of you that drives to the store and you get there safely and you don't remember how you got there. That's the unconscious mind. It's also the part of you that when you're driving to the store, accidentally ends up at home and you're like, how did I get home instead of going to the store when I consciously knew I was going to the store? That is also your unconscious mind. So if it can drive you to the wrong place when you're conscious about where you're going, what do you think it's doing when you're not conscious? Such as how you're feeling, how you're reacting, how you're noticing things inside of your relationship. So let me give you an example of how this can play out. Let's say that you're young and your parents fight a lot. Like a lot. And they always seem to be arguing. And they may even yell at you, they may not. But your unconscious mind deletes, distorts, generalizes information. And what it realizes, what it learns when you're young is love means yelling. Love means conflict. And so then there you are in a relationship in your 20s or in your 30s or in your 40s or in your 50s, and everything seems to be going great. You're happy, you're joyful, the relationship's flowing fine, and then you just get crappy about something. And you unconsciously pick a fight. You unconsciously get upset at something because unconsciously your brain goes, I haven't felt loved in a really long time. It's been pretty quiet around here. And you're like, I don't even know why I picked that fight. I don't even know why I reacted the way I did to X, Y, or Z. It just happened. And now you're in anger or confusion or frustration because you've in essence just started a fight with your significant other because your unconscious mind is driving that behavior. Now the same goes with your significant other. So sometimes we're like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this over and over and over again? Or why are you caught in this pattern? Or why can't you meet my needs? Or why, after we've talked about this multiple times, don't you, can't you, won't you, fill in the blank or whatever it is. Sometimes that is an unconscious behavioral driver that's coming from a belief system, a safety mechanism, or a pattern that they learned in childhood, during trauma, at some point in their life that got ingrained in their unconscious mind that's coming up so they can get an unconscious need met. A need for love, a need for safety, a need for reaction, a need for validation, whatever it is. And these are the things we're not even aware of. So when you're here in your relationship at the breaking point going, I don't know if I can do this anymore, also start looking at, is this your pattern to get in relationship for a while, and then once all the hormones wear off within the first couple of years, right, all the bonding and the attachment short-term hormones, that you start losing attraction, losing interest, and then disengage. May or may not be true. I don't know. But here's what I do know, is that what momentum, force, drive, repetition, all of those things build up in relationship, right? So in other words, it's just like quantum physics, right? You've got, what is it, mass times force or something like that, right? Mass times momentum or something like that. I can't remember I used to know the formula. But anyway, when something's moving in one direction, right? It's moving, like let's say it's moving at like 20 miles an hour, right? There needs to be a certain force or certain momentum or both to knock it off track. Okay? Or to change its momentum or to stop the momentum or stop the direction or change the direction. Okay? And then we know that the more momentum something has, the easier it keeps going, the farther it goes. And this goes with our own thoughts, beliefs, and unconscious patterns. Because if we are accustomed to looking at the negative in a relationship, if we are accustomed to reacting a certain way, if it's how our unconscious mind has functioned for years and years and years and years and years, this is what it will continue to do. And so sometimes, even with conscious awareness, the momentum of the reaction is so strong that someone can't break it, right? So, it's saying, where's the live video? Someone asked, is the live video? It should be on, let me record. It is on this page. So, it takes a while to shift, right? So I always tell people, be a little bit patient and keep reminding, which I know is tiring. I know it sucks to be like, okay, we already had a conversation about this. Let's have the conversation again, right? How do you keep having conversations when you don't know, or you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling lost, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling confused? So for example, there are some things I needed in a relationship that were not happening. I'm very, very touch forward. Like, I need a lot of touch. I like a lot of playfulness. I like a lot of flirtation in relationship. And so when I sit down and talk to people about what I need, and then it happens for a little bit, and then it stops because it's not their natural pattern. And then I ask for it again. And then it starts again for a while, and then it stops because it's not their natural pattern, right? And they're asking me for things. Hey, will you do this for me? And I start for a while and I stop because it's not my natural pattern. And I start for a while and I stop because it's not my natural pattern. So it takes energy, momentum, thoughtfulness, awareness in order to keep moving. But what usually happens with us as humans is that it starts and we get all happy and then it stops and we go, see, I told them and they don't actually care enough. No, they do care. Because they tried. They made an effort, and that effort gets to get recognized, and then a reminder. And not like a, see, you did it for a week and now you don't care about me, but like consistent reminders like, hey, remember, I'd like a little more touch. Until the momentum builds where it becomes part of the unconscious habit, part of the unconscious pattern. Because we've got 4 ways that the unconscious mind works, right? We call them kind of skill levels. Let's call them skill levels. So we've got unconscious incompetence, which means that you don't know that you don't even know, right? So when you're unconsciously incompetent, you don't even know that you don't know something. Now it's brought to your attention like, hey, did you know that there's this cool little thing called direct and indirect conversation? And they're like, no, I didn't know that. Tell me about it. And you talk to them about it. And they're like, oh, and now they're consciously incompetent. They know that they don't know how to do that. They're aware of it. They might start working on it, but they're still incompetent, which means that when we're consciously incompetent, you're not very good at it at an unconscious level. So then we move up, and if we keep practicing and working, we become consciously competent, which means if I'm thinking about it, I can do it, and I can do it really, really well. So this is where the skill level builds, where we start consciously knowing like, oh, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this, right? So think about it with driving. Like, if you've never driven a manual, you are unconsciously incompetent. Like, I don't know what to do with this clutch. I don't know what to do with this stick. I don't even know what to do, right? Then you move into unconscious, conscious incompetent, and unconscious. Anyway, you move up to the next one, which means that, okay, now you know that you should push in the brake and you should do it like, or push in the brake and push in the clutch and when to do it, when the timing is and when to shift. And then you move into conscious competence, where when you think about it, you can do it. And you can do it pretty quickly and pretty easily, right? And then you move into unconscious competence, which is the highest level, which means you're doing it without thinking about it, without even noticing it. So this is all of us when we drive to the store and we don't remember how we get there. This is us when we're doing things at our job and we don't even remember doing it. This is us when we are maybe cooking dinner, or we're sewing things, or we're working on a car, or we're fixing something where we've done it so many times, we're so good at it, or it comes so naturally to us that we just naturally do it at a high level. That is unconscious competence. And that is where we're trying to get to in every aspect of the communication and the respect and what you need in relationship. Okay? This is what actions are you taking or not taking? What words are you using or not using? So when we're with a partner and we're getting to this breaking point of like, they don't care, they're not doing the thing, also notice, are they trying? Have they been working on it and then forgetting? Starting and then stopping, starting and then stopping. It can be because they're moving through these levels of competence. And they just need a little support and reminder. Now, another thing that we can look at for ourselves is, what are we focused on as individuals? Because I will tell you what, where focus goes, energy flows with everything. And the way you do one thing is the way you do everything as well. So if my focus in the relationship is all the things that my partner is not doing, all the things they're saying, that don't vibe with me, all the ways I'm not getting treated well, that is going to be what I'm training my brain to see all the time. So then my brain is actually scanning for the things that are not serving me instead of the things that are serving me. Right? So let me give you an example, like a current real life example. So I move at a very, very, very fast pace. And we just moved houses. My boyfriend and I just moved houses. And so sometimes I look at the pace of him packing and I'm like, he's not packing at all. He's doing nothing. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do it all because that's my default, right? I'm going to have to do it all, blah, 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 blah. And then I go back and forth between pressuring him to pack more and then being like, you know what? Not my problem. I'm just giving this up and he can pack at whatever rate. And if he doesn't move out by June 1st, that's his problem. That's his problem. I don't even care. Right? But both times I'm focused on the lack of work he's doing. Right? Just one time I'm choosing to react in active anger, aggression, annoyance, right? I'm letting it impact me, but really it doesn't have that much impact to do on me if my stuff's all ready to go. And so I'm letting something that he's doing impact me that doesn't need to impact me. Because honestly, I can be like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if he's packed or not in my world. Now, if he says, hey, you have to skip a half day of work to help me move, which he's not going to do, that would impact me. Now it's a different conversation. But we also get to look at what are we focused on that maybe doesn't even impact us at all. We may not like it that they're doing it that way. We may think they should use a different process or go at a different speed or use a different timing or do it in a different order. But does it really matter? Does it really matter in the long run? Because, okay, so I remember being at Death Valley. I was camping at Death Valley. And I was next to this couple. And sorry, I'm just checking my breaking point again. So, all right. So I was with this couple, or not with this couple, I was next to this couple. And this woman was starting to cook dinner. So first they'd been there reading their books, and this couple, and they were all chill, and then this nice little campsite set up, and everything's all cozy, and I'm over here cooking my stuff on my campfire. And then the woman starts cooking, and then she's like, oh, well, will you take over, whatever. So the husband takes over the cooking. And he's making something simple. I don't even know what they're making, but so he throws the butter in the pan, and she's like, how much butter did you put in there? And he was like, oh, like a half a stick. And she goes, oh, that's a little much. And he's like, oh, okay, like, sorry, like, whatever. And then she went over, was touching with something, and then he kept she's like, did you just add the garlic? I'm like, yeah. No, you need to add the garlic after the blah, 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 blah. You can't do it in the wrong order. Now I get that garlic burns if you put it in too early, right? But then it was like, oh, how much of that did you add? Well, that's not enough. You need to add more. And then she'd come over and like kind of do it. And then she was like, oh, just let me cook. Like, why don't you go fix that light? So he goes to fix the light that's not working. It's some solar light hadn't charged or whatever, and was hanging on this pole weird. So he goes over to fix the light, and she starts telling him how to fix the light, right? And I was just sitting there going like, I'm stressed out, just sitting here next to them, listening to her tell him how to do everything. Now, this is not me ragging on the women, right? Like, there was some need that she was trying to meet by telling him how to do everything. Whether that be her need for control, which might be a safety mechanism for her. It might be an idea that there's only one right way to do it. Obviously, her husband's used to this. They've been in this pattern for a while, right? So there might be a need that he's getting met by having her do this as well. But I don't know. Maybe underneath he's like, this is my breaking point. I'm so sick of listening to her tell me what to do as if I'm a child all the time. Her breaking point might be like, God, it feels like I have to tell him what to do all the time. He never does anything right. But is that true? Is either way true? I don't know. I don't know for that particular relationship. But this is what can happen, is that we start naturally getting into rhythms, patterns, habits, ways of interacting, dynamics between the two of us that start shifting or bringing negativity to the relationship. And this can be while you're dating, this can be in relationship, all the things. So where could you shift yourself, or what you're looking at in order to shift the dynamic? Even if that means he's still going to hang up the light wrong, he's still going to burn the garlic, the packing's not going to get done, and is it really that big of a deal? It might be. I don't know. Where is the actual big deal? Because so often, when we feel hurt or we feel resentment, and it's unspoken, it's living in our bodies from something in the past, even sometimes a past relationship, not even our current relationship, that unspoken hurt, resentment, letdown, betrayal influences how our mind sees everything else in the future. It influences our focus for everything else in the future. And we see this all the time with people dating. You know, their ex cheated on them, or someone they dated cheated on them. And now every time their significant other grabs the phone and there's something on there, they go crazy. Right? The jealousy pops up, the fear pops up, the I'm not enough, what if he's cheating on me, what if he's lying to me, pops up again. Now there's a difference between having that healed and noticing the red flags, or having that unhealed and being reactive. And it can sometimes feel like a little fine line for both men and women. Like, where am I overreacting, or where is this a red flag? So this is where you get to tune in really deeply. If I hadn't experienced something in my past relationship, would this bother me? Does it feel like it's out of integrity for someone in relationship? Would I do what they are doing now? Now, I also want to mention that poor guys, like when they jump on Instagram, when they jump on YouTube, I don't care what they're normally watching. It will not, if they watch puppy videos all day long, it's still going to show like 2 puppy videos and like 3 half-naked women. Like, that's just the way the algorithms work for guys. And I've seen this over and over and over again with my nephews, with my brother-in-law, with guys that I know, right? Where they're just like, yeah, this is just what happens. Like, it doesn't matter. It's always on our feed because it's the general overall algorithm. So know that just because that kind of stuff's popping up doesn't mean that they're doing anything inappropriate, if you consider that inappropriate. Okay. So when you're at the breaking point in your relationship, if you're there now, I want you to tune into something. And if you're not in relationship right now, tune into a past relationship. So think about, when you think about your relationship right now, or if you're thinking about a past relationship, think about that. Tune in. Close your eyes. Tune into your heart. When you think about your significant other, what is in your heart? If you can label the emotion, what's the emotion? Does it have a shape? Does it have a color? Does it have a weight to it? What are the thoughts that are associated with it? Good. So now what I want you to do is I want you to start breathing. And I want you to imagine that as you breathe in through your mouth or your nose, doesn't matter. Most people like breathing in through their mouth, nose, out their mouth. Right? Breathe in your nose into that spot. And as you breathe in, imagine bringing lightness, or a white light, or peace, or hear the sounds of birds singing. Taste your favorite chocolate or your favorite dessert, or something that really makes you feel luxurious and happy and joyful. And as you tune in to that relationship, hold that energy, feel that energy, but as you breathe in something new, then breathe out that old energy. So breathing in light, breathing out the heaviness. Breathing in light, breathing out the heaviness. And do that. Keep doing that. And I want you to make your breath really forceful. Like, really do this for yourself. Really give yourself the spaciousness and the time to start getting that energy moving. Because we know that when you're holding energy somatically, in other words, when you're holding energy in your body, feelings of resentment, of anger, of hurt, of pain, or betrayal. And by the way, if you felt it somewhere else, maybe it was in your gut, maybe it was in your head, maybe it was in your throat, you can breathe there instead. Good. Now that you've done it a few times, I want you to imagine taking your hands and actually grabbing whatever that energy is, whatever that sensation is, that feeling is, that emotion is, and I want you to pull it out of your body, like as if it's a physical hard thing. I want you to pull it out of your body, pull it all the way out, like really pull it out. Like if it's stringy, keep pulling on all the strings, keep pulling it, just like really pull it out of your body. And I want you to feel that energy, feel that heaviness, the colors, the shapes, all the stuff. Feel it leave your body now, like leaving some emptiness, which is good. Just leave it all behind. Breathe it out. Push it out. Push it out. You do not need this anymore. Now watch it all burn up. Like burn it up in the sun. Watch it all float away from you. Whatever you need to do, watch it go out in a fire in front of you and cut the cord. Release it fully and completely, allowing it to transform out in the ethers, whatever that looks like for you. And then I want you to imagine now reaching out into the sun. Even if the sun is set already, imagine reaching out to the sun. You all know what the sun looks like. And grabbing the purest white light, the warmth, the presence of the sun, and think about something that makes you super joyful or content or peaceful. Birds singing, walking in nature, reading a book, listening to music, giggling, smiling with your best friend, drinking wine, whatever it is, right? Going out fishing, going out hunting, enjoying laying in nature. I already said that, but like bring something in, bring it into your heart, playing with your kids, your grandkids. Bring that energy into your heart and bring it in, noticing the love and amplifying all the emotions, the love, the peace, the joy, the contentment, the giggles, whatever it is, the smells. Some of you are very smell oriented. What does it sound like? What are you saying to yourself when you're in peace, when you're in love, when you're in harmony? How are you sitting? How are you moving differently when you're in peace and love and joy and harmony? And allow that now to lock into your body and wash all the way through, changing all the energy, all the cells, all the spaces in between, the quarks, yes, the photons. Allow those all to shift. Allowing this to be your reality, because this is your reality. This is what you get to choose every day. And sometimes you have to change it every minute. Sometimes you have to change it every hour. But you get to change how you feel and how that's stored in your body. So when you're noticing that heaviness, come back to this place of peace. And so now as you allow that to move all the way through your body, if you haven't yet, allow it to fully integrate. Open your eyes. Come back here and notice now how when you let go of something, when you let go of old emotions, it is actually the prime directive of the unconscious mind to keep your body safe, whatever that looks like. So I'm going to ask your unconscious mind now to look at and notice that this is a better way of keeping you safe. That when you let go of the old emotions, take the learnings, take the light, take the love, take the joy from the situation, anything that you've learned, anything that you need to know, and turn it, transmute it into love, light, and joy and peace. You'll have learned what you needed to, so the negative emotions can release so you can have more comfort in your body. If you've heard of Louise Hay, she's a fairly famous author. I don't remember her exact story, but her story is about, basically she worked with a lot of people with emotional disturbances, emotional discomforts, pain, grief, sadness, overwhelm. I can't remember if she worked at a church or spiritual organization, something like that, or just for the homeless, something along those lines, right? And she started tracking and noticing that different situations pattern differently in the body. This is the whole theory of meta-medicine as well, is that when we're having physical discomfort, our eyes stop working so well, we're not hearing very well, we're having pain in one shoulder, pain in our neck, pain in our back, discomfort, kidney challenges, womb challenges, anything in our body, we keep getting similar illnesses over and over and over again. This is our body speaking to us about places that we're holding emotion in our life, resisting moving forward, resisting healing, resisting letting something go that no longer serves us. So when we are in a place in a relationship of unspoken resentment, of fear, of our needs being unmet, that is going to be holding in your body and affecting your energy. It affects your health. It affects your ability to communicate clearly because it's draining you. So how can you now look at where you are in relationship what your role is in your own healing of this part of the relationship, right? Because here's the thing is like, we all have relationship pain. I don't care how amazing and loving a relationship can be, there's going to be a time where someone accidentally disappoints someone else. There's going to be a time where there miscommunication happens. There's going to be a time where there's conflict. Now, the best relationships, you can call them soul-aligned relationships, or the people that have, it's not even about good communication all the time. It's about how do you meld together, but also how do you not maintain your own individuality, but like accept each other and kind of go in that ebb and flow of relationship. The conflict is less intense. The healing is faster. The heartbreak is less deep. The hurt is less deep. So is there a way that you can shift the hurt for yourself, right? Shift the roots of the pain of relationship in order to come back to healing. Now, there's a difference between healing, hurts, so you can move forward in your relationship or reset or rewind or whatever it is, and ignoring, right? Like, so for example, I have a good friend. Well, I mean, he's an acquaintance now. I haven't seen him in a long time. But for a long time, he's a good friend. And his wife cheated on him. And he was heartbroken, right? He was going to leave the marriage and all the things, and they worked it out. She came to awarenesses of why she cheated. They had conversations about it. They set new boundaries. They set new rules about how they wanted to interact in their relationship, what she needed, what he needed. And they came back together. And now they've been married for like 20 years. They've got like 3 kids, and they're super happy because they were able to move through that heartbreak. Now, some people, infidelity is like a solid no, I'm never going to be able to trust you again, and that's it, and I'm an out. That is my breaking point, and I'm done. And if that's you and you know that, then great. Are you following through on that when it happens? What is the actual breaking point? In other words, what would it take for you to actually need to leave the relationship? Is it a series of small hurts? Is it a huge betrayal? Is it a certain type of conflict? Does it have to get to abuse? Sometimes abuse isn't even enough for some people. What would it take? Because if you actually know what it would take to leave your relationship, then you can notice, have I already passed that point? And that's why I'm so unhappy. Or am I not at that point? Which may mean there can be some reconciliation, there can be some healing, there can be some health in the relationship. Now, also, when I teach my soulmate course, I teach about the 5 things. Like, everybody has 5 things that are what we call the 5 traits that they need in order for a lifetime of love with their relationship. So if people have all 5 traits, then they look at, what am I getting the loving consideration? Am I being treated like the king or the queen that I am? And then they look at chemistry, right? And then other compatibility traits. So if you're also always in conflict, it could be that a trait that you absolutely need in this world, in your relationship, does not exist in your partner and never will. If they are not good at communicating, yes, communication is a skill. And will they ever be able to be skillful enough for you? Or is that going to be the thing that's going to break you up? Because usually the missing trait is the thing that breaks people up. And if you learn that about yourself, if you understand what it is that's missing in your relationship, and you can look back at, especially if you can look back at multiple relationships and say, hey, here's the reason why I keep breaking up with people, you might notice a trend in yourself of like, hey, I just realized I'm not dating or engaging in relationships with people that actually have something that I need. And then I'm trying to make them meet that need, but they actually physically can't because it's not who they are in the world, or they're going to try and stop and try and stop and try and stop. And maybe they can grow to be unconsciously competent at it, because there are some things that can do that, and people can change, and all the desires and all the energy and everything can move if people want. And if they're not willing to do that because it's not part of their nature, it doesn't make them happy, it's not who they are, that may be the breaking point. That might be time to be like, you know what? You're like ice cream and I'm like onions. Like, we just don't go well together. We're both amazing for our purposes, and we're just not, and that's it. And we leave with kindness and empathy and love instead of anger and hatred and resentment, because the only person being affected by the anger, hatred, and resentment is you and your body, and then however else you're projecting it outwards into the world, on your kids, on your significant other, at work. Because I know that if you're angry in your relationship, you may feel like you're happy when you leave the house and go out with your friends and at work and stuff, but somewhere inside of you, that anger is still building, which is why when you walk back in the door of your house, boom, it's right there, super accessible. So yeah, you can shut it off, you can compartmentalize it, but it's there. And eventually that unhappiness, that resentment, that anger will start spilling over into other areas of your life. Your capacity to hold joy, your capacity to be present in the moment, your capacity to provide in the way that you wish. And not to mention, if you have children and you're unhappy in your relationship for a long period of time, they're going to pick up on that. You can't hide that. Even if you don't fight in front of them, children feel. And they're going to learn what relationship looks like based upon what you're doing right now. Now, did my parents have a lot of times that they fought? Sure, there was conflict. My dad would get all angry in one way and my mom would get all angry another way. And I know the patterns of how they fight. In fact, sometimes, surprise, surprise, that's what shows up when I'm fighting in my relationships, right? Because it's like, this is what we learned. It's ingrained in me unconsciously. And so until I do some healing work, and have done a ton of healing work, because let me tell you, I'm way less passive aggressive than I used to be. I am way less salty than I used to be. I am way less reactive than I used to be. But a couple things still get my buttons, right? Because we all have the thing or the two things or the three things or the 8 things or the 20 million things that trigger us. So what can we do to shift the trigger? What can we do to notice when we're in the same pattern? So in EFT, emotional family therapy. That's not what it's called. Marriage therapy. Anyway, EFT. F. Anyway, what we notice. Can't remember. My words are so broken tonight. I'm sorry. So what we notice is that couples will tend to get in like a little dance. That's the same dance over and over and over again. So one person says X and the other person reacts Y, which means that the first person does this thing, which means the next person does that thing, until there's the conflict break again. And then both sides start making up stories about what it means. And then the unconscious mind goes, oh yeah, and then that time that happened, and then that time that it happened, and then that time that it happened, and then that time that it happened, and then that time it happened. And all of a sudden they're all built up in one. I had to have a hard conversation with my boyfriend. And I was like, listen, because we'd get in these arguments about stuff. And like little arguments, right? And I'd be like, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. I don't want to name off all the little things that you didn't do in the last year I've known you or whatever, right? I don't want to name off all the little things. What I want you to do is just notice when you're saying you're going to do something and then you don't do it, like make it more of an effort to do it. Because if I have a timeline, if you say you're going to do it on Monday and you don't do it on Monday, then say like, hey, I didn't do it on Monday. I'm sorry I didn't have time today. I'm going to try to get to it tomorrow. I'll get to it Wednesday or whatever. Reset that timeline for me, because otherwise, if you don't do it, you said you're going to do it on Monday and you don't say anything, then I'm going to probably bring it up. Hey, did you get that done? And then if you say no, but don't tell me that you're going to do it, I'm probably either going to do it myself and get upset about it. Right? Because that's my old pattern. I'm way better now. But that was my old pattern. Then I'll just do it myself, and then I'll be upset at you for saying that you're going to do it, not doing it, when I could have just done it myself in the first place, right? This is how I roll, right? Totally in my masculine state. Just like, I'll do it all. If you don't do it, I'll just do it all. I'll take over everything. So my boyfriend and I had to have a conversation of like, here's my pattern. Here's what I don't want to do. Here's what I need from you. I need you to tell me if you're not going to get something done. I totally get it. Time gets away from all of us. Things get distracted. Things go poorly, whatever. Just tell me like, hey, by the way, I know I said I would do that by today and I didn't get a chance to do it. Cool. I will be cool as a cucumber. Unless there was actually like a deadline that needed to be met, like, whatever. But if it's like our own deadlines, that doesn't bother me. So that's what I needed to communicate. And I needed to communicate also why it was important. During this conversation we had recently, I realized that all the little things that he hadn't done for the last year that I kept saying, like, I don't need to talk about all the things you didn't do in the past, suddenly were building up inside of me. And every time I got upset that he wasn't doing something, I would think, my brain, my unconscious mind would pull up all the things that he hadn't done in the past, and that's what I would focus on, right? Where focus goes, energy flows. So what happens is I'm thinking about the fan, and I'm thinking about the vent, and I'm thinking about the doorknob, and I'm thinking about the time I had to do this. I'm thinking about the fence that didn't get done, and I had to push it, and all of a sudden I've got 5, 6, 7, 8 things that are actually making me so upset that I forget that it doesn't actually matter if he didn't do the one thing that needs to be done right now. Because my brain's in the past. But our brain can't tell the difference between past, present, and future. Everything is as if now. So my brain is pulling forward all the things from the future into now. So sure, I can do like my emotional freedom techniques and tapping, and I can release it. But sometimes it's part of our power to speak it out loud. So sometimes, yeah, we can sit in there and be like, whoo, good, that's all forgiven, that's all done, perfect, I never need to bring it up again. But for whatever reason, in me, this particular type of pattern needed to be spoken aloud. So I just sit him down and actually say, like, I want to talk about some stuff. And I know this is weird because some of the stuff's like super far in the past, but I just need to get it off my chest. And yeah, he was annoyed. He's like, why are we bringing this up now? Or a couple things he was like, we talked about this before. I was like, yeah, we talked about it. I brought it up, but we actually never made an agreement on what was going to happen next or how we were going to handle the situation. So yes, we talked about it, but there was no resolution. There was no solution. And my brain needs a solution. It's just the way I am. I'm a very direct speaker and a very direct listener. So let's explain that. So there's direct and indirect talking. There's direct and indirect listening. So think about it this way. If I'm thirsty, I'm a direct talker, I'm going to say like, hey, I'm kind of thirsty. Can I get a glass of water? Or may I have a glass of water? Or where's the water? Or whatever I'm going to say to get my thirst needs met. If I'm an indirect speaker, I might say like, wow, I'm really thirsty. Hoping that the other person is going to pick up that I'm thirsty and offer a glass of water. Now, direct listeners might go like, oh, she's thirsty. Oh, she'd probably like something to drink. And they will say, oh, you're thirsty. Would you like a glass of water? And so direct listeners will pick up on some of those nuances that indirect speakers say. But if I'm an indirect listener and someone says, oh, I'm thirsty, I might be like, oh, yeah, I'm thirsty too. Or, yeah, it is really dry in here, isn't it? And then person one's like, what the hell? They're not even trying to meet my needs. And I'm like sitting here going like, I didn't know there was a need to be met. Like I have no idea because I'm an indirect listener. And so when we have indirect listeners and direct talkers, sometimes that can also create conflict. Right? Any of the combination can create conflict. Direct talkers, direct listeners, they're great, except they can sound aggressive to each other. Like it sounds, if you're an indirect listener and someone's talking at you directly all the time, it can sound like they're being very mean, very aggressive, very demanding, very forceful. And you're like, dude, I'm just like, gosh, like, what do you... But really, that's just the way they speak. That's the way they've learned to speak. That's the way their brain functions in the speaking realm. Just the same way that indirect listeners and indirect talkers, that's the way their brain functions. Can you learn how to listen in a different way? Can you learn how to speak in a different way? Absolutely. Is your default what your default is? Absolutely. So now since I never spoke it directly and there was this kind of indirect like, oh, okay, I acknowledge that there was a problem. My direct brain is like, where's the solution? Wait, the solution didn't happen. Well, now I got to bring it up again because the solution didn't happen. And he's in his indirect brain going, well, we talked about it. It's resolved, right? Because we talked about it. No, because there was no solution, right? But it has nothing to do with like him not wanting to create the solution or him wanting to be helpful or any of that. It has to do with we're just different types of communicators. And if we're not attentive to that, we're going to drive each other batty. Right? He's very direct speaker. I'm a very direct speaker 90% of the time. Except when I'm angry, I'm passive because I'm from Minnesota. But I try to be very direct, right? So we all fall into these patterns. And so when we are aware of what we're doing, when we're aware of how we're communicating, when we're aware of our own responsibility, what are we focused on, we can shift a lot of the dynamics of a relationship. Because you can even be like, oh yeah, now I'm noticing how they're an indirect listener. So even when I said that directly, they didn't understand. Because they literally will not understand direct statements. Because it's like, it just absorbs differently. Right? There's no like timeline or structure or anything behind it in their brain. Even though a direct speaker will think that the timeline is implied often. Hey, will you get me a glass of water? Sure. Hey, will you get me weren't you going to get me a glass of water? Yeah. I'm going to get to it in a second. Indirect speakers are kind of like that. Like, oh. Or direct listeners, are like that. Like, oh. It's not necessarily that they're self-absorbed. They literally don't put a timeline on it sometimes. So when we put it in this frame, it starts helping us communicate better. Like, hey, will you grab a glass of water for me right now, please? Because now I know I have to be that specific to an indirect listener. Okay. So, I hope that's helpful. So why does it hurt so much? Where's the pain? When we're not getting our needs met, when we're not speaking our truths, when there's been small betrayals, small heartbreaks, small letdowns over and over and over again. Yes, that builds up in the body. Yes, it builds up in our emotions, right? And it hurts because then what we do is we need to, we shut down our heart, we shut down our brain, we shut down our energy field to protect ourselves from being hurt more. And guess what happens when we shut down our heart and we shut down our energy field? Either we go numb, or we sit in a low vibration emotion, or we start deflecting, protecting by being angry and resentful outwards. Okay, and that's a super huge overview because I just realized what time it was. But this is what happens. So then it hurts because we're sitting inside our little bubble as our brain, our conscious and our unconscious mind keep going over all the things that were done or not done and said and not said, and all the things added to all of our beliefs, added to all the actions and inactions, added to all of our past relationship baggage, right? And then all of a sudden we have all these roots of pain that we've never dealt with, or maybe we've dealt with a little bit superficially, but it's nagging at us, and then we're like, I'm done. Or maybe I'm not done, but I'm over this, and I'm sick of this, and I don't know how to do, and I've tried communicating, I've tried changing things, I've tried being patient, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried that. Yes, and what does it take to change the dance? What does it take? Do you actually want to? Step one. This is a boundary, right? Number one, do you want to? Yes or no? If you don't want to, if you don't want to try anymore, if you don't want to be present anymore, if you don't want to do it, get out. Get out, though, with love and joy and peace, not with anger and hatred and bitterness and putting your kids in between. Right? Because that's not going to be good for anybody. So, boundary setting, 4 steps. Number 1, do I want to? Yes or no? Number 2, do I have the time, money, energy, and resources to do so? So, this is where some people get stuck in leaving relationship, right? So, is it actually a boundary or is it a made-up boundary? And if you're upset the boundary exists, what can you do to change it? In other words, some people will say, I don't have the money to leave the relationship. Is it that you don't? Now, this is not judgment. This is me just like asking questions, right? Because everyone's different. Is it that you don't actually have the money at all? Is it that things are too expensive in your areas, right? You look at California where like 5 people have to live together in an apartment just to survive because it's so expensive. That can be a bigger consideration. Can you move across the country? Can you get a different job? Like, can you navigate in a different way? I don't know the answer, only you do. But everything is a story. If you are dead determined to make something work, it will work. There are people that have snuck out of houses in the middle of their nights, barefoot, with the clothes on their backs, maybe, to get out of a relationship. No money, no wallet, no anything. And not only have they survived, but they've turned their lives around and thrived. And you can too, if that's what you want. Now, some of us don't want to do it because it's hard. Okay, great. Are you going to choose ease? In that way, stay suffering in your relationship and just to avoid the pain of leaving? If that's your choice, great. But know what you're doing, because if it's your choice to stay in relationship because it feels too hard to get out, then how can you find joy in your relationship? How can you find happiness and peace where you are right now? In other words, how can you let them be them, you be you, but in a way that's peaceful, not angry, not resentful, not forceful? Because the loneliness, the hurt, the overwhelm, it's so insidious in relationships, right? So when you hit your breaking point in relationship, it doesn't mean that you're failing, right? It means that your soul is calling for truth. It's calling for alignment. It's calling for healing. So just notice, are you avoiding your decision? Or do you know what your decision could be and you're ignoring it, right? Like, in other words, am I in my car and the engine light's flashing and the low oil light's flashing and I'm just like, oh, that'll go away. Or I'm sure it'll change. I'm sure it'll change if I just talk to it enough. It'll change, right? Sometimes we actually have to physically make changes. Okay, so when you feel stuff in your body, when you start noticing emotions, breathe it through, tear it out, get rid of it, do some tapping, do something to move it through your body, because when it lives in the body, it makes it worse. It creates the energetic resonance. It attracts more of the like attracts like. So if you're stuck in anger, resentment, hurt, not only are you going to focus your brain on anger, resentment, and hurt, but you're also going to attract more anger and resentment and hurt, because that's the vibration you're holding. So you need to start moving your body, moving the energy, moving your emotions. And yes, sometimes it's not very fun and it's not very easy. But the payoff is so worth it. So I've got a couple of gifts for you. And this is what I'm going to do in every class. I'm going to give to you fully and freely. And then if you want to take the next step, I've got some gifts and I've got some offers. So if you would like to learn some emotional freedom techniques tapping, there's a free class that I offer. I will send that. I can drop the link in. You can have that and start learning how to use tapping to clear your emotions, to clear some of the beliefs, to start moving things through. The other offer that I'm offering today is called Deep Trust. And it's a masterclass that I offered a couple months ago for the soul that's in crisis and the heart that's ready to heal. It's a 3-session masterclass. But it's also a reckoning and a return, right? So this is like the really high-functioning, spiritually curious, emotionally awake people that are just uncertain, right? Maybe you're questioning a relationship. Maybe you're questioning something else in your life, and you're feeling like you're not really trusting your choices or your decisions or other people or your space in life or your guides or whatever it is, but there's a lack of trust. Right? And you're struggling to really decide what's the right decision. What does that look like, sound like, feel like? So that class is in there. I'll drop it. I'll drop the link in the chat. That's only $11 for this series of 3. So that is a class for many of you that many of you will find helpful. So I highly recommend that you get that. There's also a second class called Overcoming Grief and Loneliness. This is a 4-series class. This is a $33 class, but it helps you look at, where am I feeling lonely? Where is there grief around the potential of this relationship, or the potential of what I thought I was getting, the potential of where I was going, or the grief from the heartbreak, the hurt, the little betrayals? Overcoming the loneliness of like, I'm laying next to somebody that I used to love and I don't anymore. Or I used to love and I want to love, but for some reason I'm feeling really disconnected. Or I'm trying to have connection and it's gone. So that's the Overcoming Grief and Loneliness and Isolation class. That's 4 1-hour classes. That will really help you move through that. That's $33. Okay. And then eventually, next time, I'll be talking about the class When to End It, When to Stay. So that's a 6 series sessions as well. That's one of my most powerful programs that I adapted from my mentors. So play with this over the next few days. Move your energy. Start having a deeper awareness. Notice when something's happening, when there's conflict, when there's anger, notice like what does this mean about me? What's the story I'm making up about it, right? Not that you're making up a story, but your brain makes up stories all the time, right? So instead of when the dishwasher's not being emptied, instead of being like, oh, they didn't empty the dishwasher, that sucks, now I have to do it, it's they don't care. They don't love me. They don't listen. I'm not valuable enough for them to follow through, right? The big story that's underneath those small disappointments. So notice those. We'll start working with those next time, right? How to reclaim your power, how to reclaim your boundaries, and how to reclaim your truth. So remember, drop any questions, any comments, any concerns in the chat. I'll be answering them, or in the group. I'll be answering them as we go. I'll drop in little suggestions and reminders as people need. And remember that you are love, you are loving, and you are lovable. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll see you next time.